Good evening. I'd like to call the Peoria Public Schools District 150 Board of Education meeting for July 21st, 2014 to order and welcome all that are here. Would you please call the roll?
Here.
Here. Would you please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, before we get started tonight, I'd like to ask you to join me in a moment of silence in the memory of Tom Stonebach, who is a longtime teacher, coach, and friend from Woodruff High School. He passed away about 2 weeks ago after a valiant struggle with ALS. So if you just join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. Do we have any awards or recognition tonight?
One recognition, we would like to recognize Sterling Middle School. They received their authorization about 2 weeks ago. They are now officially an international baccalaureate school. So a very special congratulations to retired Principal Donna O'Day and the entire Sterling staff for their hard work over the past several years. And thank you to all the central office administrators that also supported that. Very proud of Sterling. We'll be recognizing them at our all-staff meeting on August the 14th. But once again, we have our second International Baccalaureate School. They met the timeline. We set a goal 3 years ago that we wanted to be authorized, wanted those schools to be authorized, and they met the challenge. So just congratulations to Sterling International Baccalaureate School.
Thank you. Do we have any announcements by board members? Okay, seeing none. Could I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes of June 16th, 2014 and July 1st, 2014?
So move.
Second.
Are there any corrections to those minutes? Would you call the roll?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Okay. We are going to move one of our presentations up at this point in the meeting. We have some of our partners who need to move on for other evening activities, so we're going to go down to the first information item, the Illinois State Board of Education and Center for Disease Control Health Education Project. And I think we have a joint presentation with the Peoria City County Health Department.
Yes, we do. Ms. Langhoff, if you would come up, our Director of Special Education and our community partners for the presentation.
Thank you. Okay. You ready? All right, good evening. My name is Maureen Langhoff. I'm the Director of Special Education. Good evening to all of you. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. We have several community members here with us this evening supporting this project, and there's a lot of just support from community members, and I've been just amazed in the short time that I've been working on this project to just know that there's a lot of community support that's coming along with this. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. We have been identified through the State Board of Education as a priority district, one of 15 in the state that has been chosen to participate. Yes. Brooke Ferrero-Baker is one of our school psychologists that's going to be presenting tonight, and she's at Peoria High. Go ahead.
Monica Hendrickson from the Peoria City County Health Department.
Mariella Cabot, I'm a nurse practitioner in Unity Point Health Methodist and School Health Clinic at Manual.
Okay. So as part of this grant, one of the things, the premise of the grant is the Center for Disease Control is partnering with the Illinois State Board of Education to work with the priority districts, as I explained. What we're basing this work on is a new Public Act 98, the 0441, which we'll provide a little bit more detail into. So the scope of teen pregnancy and sexual transmitted illnesses. And we wanted to point out that this is a 5-year grant through the Center for Disease Control and the Illinois State Board of Education. So the districts that are partnering as part of this grant will be receiving support for several years.
Maybe cut some of those lights, you can't see it very well.
Can you turn some of the lights off?
Set of lights.
Real quickly, this is not a grant we applied for. This is correct?
Correct.
I mean,
We were asked-
Explain how this came about, that it's not something we went looking for.
Yes, would you go into detail?
Yes, actually, the reason why the District 150 was chosen for this grant is because it was considered in an area of high risk for sexually transmitted illnesses and teen births. And so we are one of 15 counties, actually 15 school districts in the state of Illinois where our levels are above the national and state averages. And we'll be presenting data on that as well.
But the state told us that we have to do this, is that correct?
No, we have a choice not to participate in the grant, but we were identified because based on our high risk and based on 2 of our district zip codes, and I think you're going to go into more detail. But we have a right to say, no, we would not like to participate in the grant, and then they would just move on and provide their support to the other 14 high priority districts. But I know you're talking about the Public Act and the teaching part.
Right.
We're going to talk about that in just a second.
Oh,
Okay.
So good evening again. I'm Monica Hendricks. I'm actually the epidemiologist at the Peoria City County Health Department. My primary goal today will actually be talking about the data in terms of teen births and sexually transmitted illnesses. But before that, I'm going to present on just the Public Act itself. Public Act 98-0441, also known as House Bill 2675. It was passed by both houses in May of 2013 and signed by the governor in August 16th of 2013 and became effective January 1st of this year. It makes changes to provide that each class or course in comprehensive sex education offered shall include instructions on both abstinence as well as contraceptions for the prevention of pregnancy and sexually transmitted illnesses, including HIV and AIDS. It provides that the school district may choose an adaptive curriculum that needs to be medically accurate, evidence-based, developmentally and age-appropriate, as well as complete, meaning it needs to teach both instructions on abstinence and contraceptives, and it also needs to be specific within its community. Currently, your district does engage in a health education curriculum and includes sexual education that promotes abstinence. The instruction must be provided in any class in which comprehensive sex education is taught, grades 6 through 12. And while it makes mention of comprehensive curriculum, there is an emphasis within the Public Act that true abstinence, true abstinence from all types of sexual intercourse is responsible and a positive decision. It also provides an opportunity within the Public Act that shall afford individuals, not just parents and guardians, but the general public, the ability to examine the curriculum and comment on it. As well as schools that need to, and schools must make and implement these changes to the sexual education curriculum beginning in January of this year. As the epidemiologist, and some individuals might not know what an epidemiologist does, my primary goal within the health department is to examine various health outcomes as well as diseases in determining health trends. The first health outcome that I'm going to be discussing with you guys is teen birth rates. This is a graphic of comparisons of teen birth rates in 2012. The rates are given as births per 1,000 women ages 15 to 19 years old. One way to visualize this is to think of a high school with 2,000 students, 15 to 19 years old. 50% are male, 50% are female. If that school was using the national average, 29.4 students will have given birth in one calendar year. In Illinois, that would be close to 28, and in Peoria County, it is 37.3. Just so you note, when I'm talking about the state of Illinois values, it includes the city of Chicago values. If you exclude the city of Chicago, those values are a lot lower. The table below indicates the percentages of births attributed to women that are 15 to 19 years old, as well as the rates. So in Peoria County, 9.5% of all births to residents within our county are to women that are 15 to 19 years old. The following are actually the three highest zip codes we have: 61603, 04, and 05. In 61603, 17% of births within that zip code are to women 15 to 19. And in 61604, it's 12%, and in 61605, it's 15.3%. Now, these zip codes also represent some of our most populous areas. That's by when you look at the rates, the births per 1,000, that takes into account population and controls for it. And in that case, the rates are 75.9, 60.1, and 86.6 births per 1,000 women 15 to 19 years old. The last line of the table looks at the remaining zip codes as a whole. So acting as Peoria County as a whole minus those three zip codes. In that case, the percentage of births to those women 15 to 19 is 5.6, and the rate is 18.8, below both the national and state values. The trend is also seen when you look at our STI values. So in this graphic, we're looking at sexually transmitted illnesses or STIs in 2012. The rates are given as, again, cases per 1,000 population of 15 to 19-year-olds. So again, imagine that high school with 2,000 individuals, 15 to 19. In this case, we have 2,000 individuals in that school, and our rates are given in 1,000. So for example, looking at the national, I have a rate of 20 per 1,000 15 to 19-year-olds with chlamydia. In that high school that we're imagining, that would be 40 students. So 40 students in the U.S. school would have chlamydia in a calendar year, and about 7.6 would have gonorrhea. In Illinois, it would be 15 students with chlamydia and 12 with gonorrhea. And in Peoria County, it would be 76.5 with chlamydia and 23.6 with gonorrhea. And again, the state value does include Chicago. As of the most recent finalized 2013 data, Peoria County ranked third in the number of gonorrhea cases out of 102 counties, or local health departments. And the two local health departments that were higher than us was Cook County and City of Chicago. The table below also indicates the rates by zip codes, disease specific, for 15 to 19-year-olds. In zip code 61603, the rate of chlamydia is 3 times that of the state of Illinois, and for gonorrhea, 4 times. In 61604, the rate is 2.6 times for chlamydia above the state of Illinois, and for gonorrhea is 3.5. And finally, in the zip code 61605, chlamydia rates are 4.2 times greater, and gonorrhea is close to 7 times greater than the state of Illinois. Again, the last line looks at the remaining zip codes, and both chlamydia and gonorrhea are half that of the state rates. Now, I understand that these 3 zip codes do not entirely fall within District 150, but in the cases of ages 15 to 19-year-olds for chlamydia alone, assigned to these zip codes in 2002, 100% of 61603 live within District 150 school district lines. 59% of 61604 and 98% of 61605 fall into District 150. And lastly, I want to make it clear that We use zip codes as a way to geographically assess and identify risk factors that contribute to health outcomes. Social and economic conditions have an important role in the health inequality, and by using zip codes, we can focus on community-level interventions, not just in the high schools, but also in the surrounding neighborhoods and community partnerships.
I'm going to give an overview of our project with the Center for Disease Control. So as we mentioned, we are one of the 15 priority districts identified by the state. And the 3 areas that we'll be addressing over the next several years are exemplary sexual health education, access to key sexual health services, and safe and supportive environments for students and staff. So the first section that we'll be focusing on is sexual health education. So this does include our curriculum and what we put in place for middle to high school students, and as of right now, it will become, if accepted, 6th through 12th grade. The programs have to be medically accurate and consistent with scientific evidence. They need to be tailored to the needs of our students and the needs of our communities, and they also need to use or have effective instructional methods which our students respond to. Sexual health services, many of you may be aware that we partner with Unity Health Methodist, and we do have health clinics in several of our buildings. This is one piece of, as we move forward, what we'll be focusing on is the health services. So that is a piece that is already very well established in our community. We need to expand. So as part of this, we're giving youth access to services. So as you can see, I don't need to read all of that, but we're educating stakeholders, so community members, staff members, teachers, parents, Board of Education, of course. We're making sure everyone is aware of what is happening in our schools in terms of curriculum and instruction, and also what is happening with the health systems or health centers that we already have in place. Mariella is going to discuss Unity Point.
Again, my name is Mariella Cabot, and I'm an APN family nurse practitioner for Unity Point Health. I am at the in-school health clinic at Manual Academy. As Maureen just mentioned, one of the listed goals of the Illinois State Board of Education is access to key sexual health services. Unity Point Health currently partners with District 150 through their clinics. We have 2 clinics that we know will be open in the fall, and that is Manual Academy and Trey Wynn. For those of you that may not know what in-school health clinics offer, I've listed those up there for you. We do things such as physical exams. We do sports physicals, school physicals. We provide acute care for minor illnesses and injuries. Chronic illnesses also, we do a lot of management and treatment for asthma. Provide vaccinations as well as confidential services. The confidential services that I'd like to speak to about today specifically are pregnancy testing and STI, which is sexually transmitted infections. We do provide pregnancy testing at the clinic. For students, whether they test positive or negative, we provide education. We do provide condoms. We tell them, we talk about prevention of STIs also, not only prevention of pregnancies. If they test negative, we talk to them about all of the ways they can protect themselves and make referrals to outside places where they can obtain it. We strongly encourage them to talk to their parents about it as well. If they test positive, we do order prenatal vitamins for them. We also make referrals. We offer support, education, all of those things that these young ladies really need at the time. For STI services, we provide those in various ways. There are students that come down to the clinic and request that they be tested. There are also students that come down with symptoms that possibly could be because of an STI, and we test and therefore may need to treat at that point. We not only test, but we also provide treatment at the clinics. The other way that we test is at Manual specifically, we do something called Get Yourself Tested Days, which is 2 days of nothing but STI testing. Last year, we actually tested in 2 days over 200 students. And that is something that is very beneficial because a lot of these students may otherwise be too embarrassed or too scared to come down and be tested. So that's a really good service that we provide there. Possible future services that we would like to be able to provide for these students is possibly get your self-tested days at other Peoria high schools, because we know with our positive rate at the school, we know that there are other students that could need this kind of service. And then offering hormonal contraceptive services, especially as education expands in the curriculum to include offering education for everybody on contraceptive services. More and more of the students, I think, will be interested in obtaining that and helping to protect themselves and prevent unintended pregnancies. Thank you.
And then the third area that we were going to discuss are providing safe and supportive environments for students and staff. So there's a lot of research that indicates that providing these types of supportive environments are associated with improved educational and health outcomes for students, and this includes sexual health outcomes. So we find that students that are in these supportive environments actually report lower levels of sexual risk-taking behaviors. Some ways that this can occur, that we can get these supportive environments, are through policies that prohibit bullying and sexual harassment, improving parental engagement, and providing students a safe place where they can discuss concerns and counseling supports. And this slide provides us with a little bit of information about self-reported sexual risk-taking behaviors of a sample of students at Peoria High School. This data was collected as part of my dissertation research in the spring of 2012. The local sample is the Peoria High students who participated. That was 248 students in that final sample. The questions were obtained from the Centers for Disease Control Youth Risk Behavior Survey, and then we wanted to compare how our students were reporting their sexual risk-taking based on national norms. So are our students similar in their sexual risk-taking behaviors than those that we're finding across the nation? And the results were pretty interesting. We found that the sample that I collected at Peoria High, our students were significantly higher in sexual risk-taking when compared to national norms, in reporting that they'd ever engaged in sexual intercourse. They were more likely to report recent sexual activity, so that was sexual intercourse within the last 3 months. They were more likely than national norms to report having 4 or more sexual partners, and were more likely to report having had sexual intercourse before the age of 13 years. However, for the last 3 questions, they were significantly less risky than the national norms. So the students in the Peoria High sample were less likely to report having used drugs or alcohol before their last sexual intercourse. They were more likely to report having used a condom, and more likely to have used a birth control method at last sexual intercourse. So I think what's interesting about this, while of course, I want to highlight that it was only 250 students, so we cannot generalize this to our high school populations at large. I want to make sure that's very clear. I think it's interesting that in all of the sexual risk-taking questions, in this local sample, none of them aligned with national expectations. So we were either far more risky or far less risky. So I think it's important to understand the risk of each individual, like schools, when we're talking about providing services for students.
Do we have this information on the other 2 high schools?
I do not. This was just part of my
Or it's
dissertation.
just part for
Yeah.
Peoria High? Okay.
So as part of this grant, Monica's going to talk to us about our action plan and community involvement.
So first, I'd like to just acknowledge some of the community stakeholders. As a certified health department in the state of Illinois, through administrative code, the health departments are required to do a community health needs assessment and improvement plan every 5 years. The most recent plan, adopted in July of 2011, had reproductive health, which included STIs and teen births, as one of the 3 health priorities in our county. With the support of the Board of Health, the plan was approved, and a subcommittee was formed that respond to addressing these specific issues. And these are the community members that are listed above that participated in our subcommittee that's just for reproductive health, and actually many of them are here today. Upon further discussion, the Reproductive Health Committee realized that to decrease STIs as well as teen births is really a 2-pronged approach. One is to work definitely with the school districts as they really deal with the high-risk population of 15 to 19-year-olds. as well as younger populations before they reach that high-risk behavior ages, as well as a community approach where we work with faith-based organizations, social service agencies, as well as government partners. And this list continues to grow as more and more people become informed about the health issues that we have in our county.
Would you like to recognize our partners that are here today?
Oh, they can stand up there.
Tell me which agency.
I'm sorry.
Because
I
we have
guess-
our regional superintendent here.
So we have Office of Education, we have Children's Home, Board of the Peoria City County Board of Health. We have Peoria City County members. Then we also have Friends of PWA, and we also have Free Methodist Church. And the administrator for the Public Health Department, Greg Chance, is here as well. And so really this goes into what the action plan for this grant is if we decide to move on towards it. The first step would really be developing and updating the district policy on sexual education curriculum. That would hopefully happen in the fall of 2014. That is the first step. After that, it would begin researching curriculum and developing health referral systems. As we see right now, Manual is the school that, Academy is the one that actually has a health service center clinic in-house, and so making sure that access is available to other schools. Next, it would be in the winter to approve a curriculum, and then plan for implementation and community outreach to educate parents, community members, stakeholders about what the new curriculum means in the spring of 2015. And then lastly, with any type of grant or any project of this capacity, is making sure that we develop a matrix to measure and ensure accountability for this grant as well as program areas. In year two, which would be the 2015-2016 school year, implement the curriculum within a pilot schools, assess access and how referral system for health services is done in the fall of 2015, and then do a self-assessment of safe and supportive environments. Do we have things in place to deal with the mental health, parental support, as well as the harassment issues that we see within our school districts? And then identify opportunities to address the gaps that we identify in the health service access as well as the safe and supportive environments. And then hopefully this time next in 2 years we'll be able to do a performance review and report how the pilot programs are doing. And that moves you to year 3 and beyond, which would be expanding the curriculum throughout the district with grades 6 through 12. Begin working with youth advisory groups to assist in how we want to do safe and supportive environment objectives in the winter of 2016. And then lastly, it would be a continuous monitoring and reassessment process to make sure that we are decreasing our STIs, teen pregnancy, birth rates, as well as AIDS and HIV in our community.
Thank you. Do we have questions or comments from board members? Ms. Kostick?
In regards to this particular program, does there have to be parental approval in order for them to participate in this particular program? Or
The parents can opt their children out of the program, yes. And that's something, as we develop our revised board policy for your review, that's something we'll be discussing. Those details will be part of our proposed revisions to board policy.
Go ahead.
My understanding, our parents now have that option as it relates to high school and the health education class to opt out of those discussions around sex.
And it's my understanding that the Holt Center and Women's Pregnancy Center now come into our schools to help support some of that curriculum and instruction for students. As we meet this fall, we're gathering health teachers from the middle and high schools, and that's our plan for this fall, is to pull some resources together to decide on a curriculum. So we absolutely want to involve our high schools and middle schools in that decision-making process. It will impact in the future what the course schedules look like, or what the content of the health class looks like. So that's why we weren't planning to fully implement till next fall.
Yeah, my question would be, obviously, this was your dissertation that you did the research on?
Correct.
Did you come to any conclusions why there's a higher propensity to risk-taking?
Well, this was actually this was kind of the preliminary analysis of my dissertation, so it was a very small part. We were looking at externalizing behaviors as well, and gender, and we did find that there was higher rates of risk-taking in our female participants that reported significantly elevated rates of conduct disorder. So that was kind of our general findings, but I figured I'd just leave that part out because I didn't really think that was relevant to what we were talking about.
What did you define as conduct disorder?
So we used a survey that not a survey, it's an instrument that's used very commonly that addresses different ADHD symptoms and conduct disorder symptoms. And so this was all self-report measures, of course. So there was no other data that was collected outside of just students saying that they participate in these behaviors or they do these things. So it's a standardized measure that is able to determine, based on your responses to the questions, the rate of elevated conduct disorder symptomology.
And out of that, do you get a sense that there's obviously some margin of error in this with the sample size of that? It's pretty substantial sample size. Is there a tendency here to feel that these self-reported behaviors are generally accurate?
Well, this is actually the 246 students. I actually collected data on over 300. We had measures built into the survey that were able to pick up on indiscriminate responding. So if they were just kind of filling in bubbles, we had a measure that looked at that specifically. So the students that did that were approximately 50 students. We cut those out. Those were not included in the final study.
Okay, in terms of policy, policy really involves taking the steps in those 3 phases then, for those 3 years? It says that we have to do policy change.
The policy committee would take that up.
What is the policy that would enable this then? What would it in effect say?
We are hoping to bring that for your review within the next month. So a revised policy would be our first step in, this whole project.
Okay.
And some other school districts have already adopted a revised policy, and so we have some different samples that we would like to provide.
There's an example of what that would look like?
Yes.
And then there's a grant involved here, or a possibility of a grant?
There's a grant involved if we agree to move forward, and basically the step is revising the policy. If we agree to move forward, then there are monies that will be available to help us with the curriculum design, training of health education, teachers, nurses.
Professional development.
Professional development. So it would be a win for our district and also our community.
Any idea the scope of that, or the relative or dollar amount of that?
They have not, actually, I'm meeting with Dr. Patterson from the state board. He's coming in town Wednesday afternoon to meet with some of us. You're more than welcome to join us if you'd like. They have not put a dollar amount per se on this grant. They have not. They've just emphasized the importance of the professional development, community stakeholders, and making sure that we're not rushing something, that we're doing this strategically and for our students.
So the other 14 school districts are just at the very start of this as well?
Yes, sir.
There's nobody.
No, we were
else,
just
right?
informed of this within the last few months, several months.
Okay.
They're at the same stage, and it goes, the current grant goes through 2018.
All right. Well,
But
thanks.
Chicago Public Schools, Decatur, Champaign have all adopted.
Springfield.
Springfield have already revised their policies.
There's very similar policies in neighboring districts that have similar demographics
Okay.
and student needs.
Very good. Thank you.
Mrs. Wolfmeyer. Reverend Butler.
Yes. In regards to strategic planning and working with community stakeholders, I'm interested, as Mrs. Costick mentioned, truly the involvement of parents in the community, as well as religious organizations to be greatly involved with this issue. So we will be making, those of you who are leading this, making sure that the community has the opportunity not only to speak, but to have questions answered, and I feel as though this does, because it's said in there, it needs to really reflect that particular community.
Definitely. And actually, most recently, the Reproductive Health Committee itself, the first partnerships we're developing outside of the schools is with the faith-based organizations. And we actually have Pastor Renfro from Free Methodist Church has been leading a lot of that as well.
Pastor, would you come forward and tell us what your involvement has been, as well as your interest? This gives us an opportunity as well, because these will be the two major concerns, parents and religious organizations. You can, we need to find a microphone for you.
So I have served with the Reproductive Health Committee for the last 2 years in putting together and identifying how to help through the faith-based community to reduce STIs and teen pregnancy. We sent out an invitation to about 35 churches, got a very, very small response, but we're working now to get together maybe to local bodies and pastoral associations to begin to present these options of greater expansion of what Dr. Hendrickson has presented, and to help seek the involvement. The hope is that through faith-based communities that would increase parental engagement, so that the place where they are coming together on Sunday mornings or whenever their services are celebrated, that they would have this information and take a serious adoption of what it means to impact the community from their religious perspective.
You said 35 churches, but very little response.
Yep.
Is it the 3 churches that are kind of represented, or is there more? Out of the 35 churches,
Yes.
how many responses did you get?
Yeah, so we got 2 responses, myself and 2 others, but it turned out that only 1 other person showed up. So now Randy McClellan and myself from the health department are working towards getting into local church bodies to meet with leadership, hopefully to be able to attend and present to ministerial associations locally an expansion of what Dr. Hendrickson has presented to you tonight.
And I bring that up because
Yes.
it's an opportunity for the community to know
Absolutely.
that one of the most vocal groups to come to the table, the door is open, conversation is ready for this.
Yes.
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
thank you.
Any other questions or comments by board members? Okay, thank you very much, and thank all of you for being here tonight. We appreciate your interest. That brings us to the portion of our meeting where the audience has the opportunity to address the board. As a reminder, this is a business meeting of the Board of Education held in public, not a public meeting. It is not a question and answer session, and it is not a debate. So there will be no response from the horseshoe unless one of us has comments once the audience comments are completed. Acknowledging everyone's First Amendment rights, we still ask that you refrain from speaking about subjects, topics relating directly to district personnel and also those not germane to the Board of Education's authority. We also ask that you refrain from using inappropriate language and keep a civil tone to your remarks. Please also keep in mind that just because something can be said does not mean it should be said. When you are recognized, please come to the podium and give your name for the record. Each speaker is limited to 5 minutes with a 20-minute limit on each subject. No one under 18 years of age may address the board unless accompanied by a parent, guardian, or a teacher without the consent of the majority of the board. First speaker tonight is Mr. Applegate. Oh, I'm sorry, Miss Applegate. I should have just gone with first and last names like I usually do. I apologize.
It's a common error. It's because my first name is Lyle Applegate. I am from Peoria, reside at 1812 West Clarewood. And this evening I come to you as a retired teacher. I'd like to speak to you on behalf of the teachers of District 150. I've spoken with many of them recently. And but before I get to them, I'd like to address the disrespect that I have seen from the Horseshoe towards the podium. The last meeting that I saw, I got on my computer and watched it, and I saw speakers berated. I saw Horseshoe people, which you clearly pointed out is not part of the plan, arguing with people at the podium. I know that on a whim during another board meeting at another venue, people were told to sit, which was unusual to the standing and feeling a sense of empowerment by standing. I also know that you are proposing to shorten the time to 3 minutes from 5 minutes, which would give us less of an opportunity. It's already difficult to narrow down what we want to say up here to 5 minutes. And as a reminder, I came in and saw that you do have security for those of us who become a little unruly. And so I promise I'll be good tonight, and you will not need to use the security. The thing that I want to talk about tonight are the people who are missing from the podium. The people who are missing from the podium have been muted out of fear for retribution. They have seen principals and other teachers moved from school to school or out of the district. And they are, as they would say and tell me, damaged. I don't think the word damage is an overstatement of what's happening in our district. No price can be put on what we've lost as a district in our community as more and more flee to other districts across the river, and some as far as away as they can get. And the skills and knowledge and love for our students that runs deep among these people is being driven away, and you, the board, are allowing it to happen. You're encouraging it all with bonuses and raises to the source of the intimidation. If you would bother to walk through our classrooms in Peoria, and I urge you to do that, you would look for outstanding practices, you would find them. If you'd look for dedicated teachers filled with enthusiasm and love, you'd find them. If you'd look for professionals who respond to nuances in their classrooms and teach accordingly, not so much. Not so much, because now they are given a certain time, a certain language, and a certain place to do every single lesson. But I don't know if you know what's happening in the schools or if you even care. You'd be hard-pressed to find anyone who questions whether or not the teachers care. They show it in their arrival at school an hour or so before their students arrive. They show it at the end of the day after the students are dismissed, when they spend several hours beyond that time. They show it in the hundreds of dollars that they spend on supplies. They show it in countless conversations with parents about how their students can achieve. And how do you show your care for the students in Peoria? You rip away their beloved principals, close their neighborhood schools, and beat down the teachers until they leave also. If someone comes in front of you and says, wait a minute, maybe we should question what's happening here, you tell them to be quiet and sit down. You show your contempt for them by looking away, although I like your attention tonight. But I have seen you sit back, cross your arms, whisper to each other while they're talking, completely ignoring what they're saying. Your actions as a board have been reprehensible and damaging, and I think you need to own that. You need to acknowledge your part in the destruction of Peoria's school system and demand better.
Thank you. Elaine Hopkins. Elaine Hopkins.
Thank you. Elaine Hopkins, 1825 Maple Ridge, Peoria. I want to thank you for standardizing the meetings at the same time, the same place. This really helps the public to know what's going on. But as you are revising the policies for the public comment, I would ask you to end the policy of requiring people to sign in to comment before the meeting. Someone in the audience may be late or arrive during the presentations, for instance, before the public comment begins, and I think they should be able to comment. They should be able to fill out a card, or maybe not even fill out a card, just come to the podium and speak, and if they then want a call back, they could fill out a card. I think it limits free speech to require people to sign in before the meeting begins, and I would hope you would revise that policy. Also, I certainly approve the plan that was presented tonight to do something about the high rates of teen pregnancy and STDs. That sounds like a great idea. I hope you approve that. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Phil Romanis.
Phil Romanis, 3321 12 Oaks Drive, Peoria. First subject I want to talk about is safety, security, and discipline. We need our school resource officers back and armed the way they were before. It's not a job for the Peoria Police Department. I've spoken with police officers. They don't feel it's their place to be there. They're not trained for it. That's not their job. School resource officers are more than just security guards. Those officers know the building, they know the students, they have a relationship with the students. It's important to get them back. And this administration has been very harmful as far as the relationship with the school resource officers. You know, a couple years ago, all the resource officers were moved for no apparent reason. None was given. You as a board approved it, didn't question it, just let it go. But you got to realize, those resource officers, they know who the good kids are. They know who the bad kids are. They know who to pay attention to and who not to. And by moving them around, that did no good whatsoever. All that is a union tactic. That's an administration tactic. And, you know, here's the question. What about the kids' safety? You know, when that was done, did anybody care about the kids? I don't think so. You as a board, I would hope you are drafting a letter to the state in support of reinstating school safety officers. I hope you're going to support that action. You know, do something besides talk. So that was item number one. Well, that's part of item number one. The other part of item number one is discipline. I am hearing over and over again from parents about discipline being out of control, and it's being covered up. You need to talk to the parents as board members. Quit talking to these administrators who tell you what they want you to hear and talk to the parents. We're the ones who know what's going on in the schools. You want to know who the good parents are or the good teachers are? Talk to the parents. You want to know who the good administrators are? Talk to the parents. You want to know who the bad teachers are? Talk to me, I'll tell you. You want to know who the bad administrators are? Talk to me, I'll tell you. Discipline's out of control. I'm hearing it from all different sides. And I'm being told that administrators are told to keep it in the building. That it's not, you know, that's their problem. No, this is our problem. Discipline is a major issue. Safety is a major issue, and we're not doing anything about it. All right. Number two, technology. And this is just amazing to me. For what you as a board spent on lawyers investigating Mr. Wetterauer, and for food for administrators making six-figure incomes, we could have bought every kid in this district a laptop. Now, that's just amazing to me. that money just squandered away for nothing, every kid could have had a laptop. You know, I don't know, maybe it's not important to you guys, but I think technology is a major issue, and we are sorely lacking in this district when it comes to technology. I mean, I think it's important that foreign language be a requirement for high school students, but I think computer language should be a requirement. No kid should be graduating high school without knowing HTML. You know, we need to update our computer courses in this district. We need to get serious about it. Another item, and this is just a thing. I don't know, and I'll be the first to admit, I don't know what the difference is. But every time it seems that you as a board talk test scores, it's 1 week it's ISAT, the next week it's NWEA, the next time it's this subgroup, that subgroup. I'll tell you what, as a parent, there's only one test score that matters to me, and that's the ACT. That's the only test score I care about, and that's the only one you remember. You think a kid remembers his ISAT?
Thank you. Sharon Cruz.
No teacher should ever again be put in harm's way just for administering a test, especially to students with special needs. Let those on Wisconsin Avenue put themselves in harm's way the next time. The students and the teachers in the room at the time are the only ones who know whether or not any testing irregularities of any magnitude at all actually occurred. Reportedly, 21 or 26 fifth grade tests were the main focus of the investigation. Were we to assume that those fifth graders had been in third or fourth grade at Charter Oak? FOIA data shows otherwise. In 2010, 10 out of 12 were from Charter Oak. In 2011, 7 of 8. In 2012, 15 of 21. And in 2013, 12 of 15. No data shows that as many as 21 Charter Oak students took the fifth grade ISAT test at Mark Bill's in any of the last 4 years. Of the 21 in 2012, 2 were from Woodrow Wilson, 2 from Glen Oak, 1 from Hines, and 1 from Irving. Why were we led to believe that all 21 test takers had gone to Charter Oak? Please explain this deception. What is truly astounding is that the investigators interviewed only 4 students. The fate of a principal and 2 to 4 teachers hung in the balances on the word of 4 children who were asked in 2014 about what happened at least 2 years earlier. Obviously, the accusers don't know much about children's memories. Moreover, we don't know what leading questions were asked by the lawyers paid for by a district with the desired outcome in mind. Principal Witterauer was punished by putting him on special assignment for the rest of the year. There seems to be no doubt that at the end of the year he would have been dismissed. The investigation claimed that he provided only 30 minutes of required 45 minutes to prepare teachers to administer the test. Even if, big if, the oversight is worthy of some sort of disciplinary action, how can any board member justify ending his career for a 15-minute shortfall? Secondly, Witterauer was accused of not comparing ISAT scores with MAP test results. The investigators assumed that there should be a correlation between the ISAT and MAP test results because the developers of the MAP test have reviewed nearly 85,000 student scores in Illinois and found that the MAP scores accurately predict success on ISAT at least 80% of the time. And we are expected to accept a principal's demotion and probable firing on the basis of a test publisher's hype used to entice school districts to buy its product. An investigation of research irregularities of that publisher's study would certainly be interesting. Also remember, no test irregularities were found for the 400 or more regular division Charter Oak students. Also, Lathan and her board members have expressed the expectation that Witterauer should have noticed that Charter Oak 3rd or 4th graders scored higher on ISAT scores than they did as Mark Bill's 5th graders. Hogwash. The irony and horror of this situation is that John Witterauer's career was ended even though District 150 was not able to explain what John did to cause Charter Oak students to score better on the ISAT test than the district expected. I will never understand how any of you let any of this happen. In a letter to parents, Tim Dolinsky defended the investigation of Charter Oak test irregularities by stating that when you have students who we know can't read Dolch sight words, you know there is something wrong if they meet or exceed ISAT standards. I requested the Dolch test results for the group of students to which Dolinsky referred. This FOIA response gives us a clue as to how District 150 manufactures data. The response says, his comment was intended as an analogy and was not literally based on specific test results. When you are harming people's lives, don't talk off the top of your heads. Misleading, irrelevant, and redacted data give credence to a witch hunt. How did you allow all of this to happen? What's up with the new admin security spy system? When was that bid and who voted on it?
Thank you. Terry Knapp.
Yes, I'm here to object to the $4,500 raise for Lathan. I'm here to object for the 3% raise for the secretaries close to her. When the rest of the secretaries are getting a 0.5%, the secretaries close to Lathan get a 3% raise. It's the same old adage, the rich get richer, the poor get poorer. In between time, in the meantime, ain't we got fun? And I don't know how, Ms. Wolfmeyer, you can allow this to happen, especially since you were a secretary and know that you made less money as a secretary until you went into the head shed and sat next to the superintendent and made more money. But to give a 3% raise now, I mean, it's just like $4,500. $4,500 is a little bit of money. You know, I think it's way too much money, and I'm going to give you some reasons why. Kevin Curtin, former principal at Irving and Garfield, has a reverse discrimination case going on. It's my understanding that the attorneys for the district went to North Carolina to do a interview with Michelle Ungraith. And in that interview with Michelle Ungraith, with the court reporter, it was asked of her if there was any racial overtones when she was here as an assistant superintendent. And she made a comment that supposedly Lathan referred to her as a skinny white lady. Now, you can go back and check that. I'm pretty sure that that was mentioned. It's part of the record in the court system. And you know, I take offense to that. And I think she took offense to that. And nobody should use that type of verbiage when talking to white counterparts. I think also it needs to be said that Sharon Cruz's incident here was just outlandish. The attack on her by Lathan and two of her subordinates out in the audience who just got up and started spouting off at the mouth, and the chair allowed it to happen and ripped on her until she was in tears and had to be consoled. I think that's just outlandish, and you're going to give Lathan a raise, a 2% raise for that type of activity. John Witterauer spent $170,000 at Charter Oak dismantling a blue ribbon school, and it's been said over and over again, it's outlandish what happened out there. 16 families are leaving. That's a count that everybody knows about. It's probably higher than that. 16 families are leaving a blue ribbon school because of the way the administrators handled this and the way the board allowed the administrators to handle this. It's very important that you understand Ms. Powell, the lady that supposedly bumped Dr. Lathan, or Miss Lathan, whatever, at the Mark Bill's Donut Fest or whatever it was banned from the school district until people investigated and found out that Dr. Lathan's version was not the same version as everybody else's version. So the ban has been lifted, thank God. You know, Lee Winger's been, on a ban under Lathan for life, and that ban should have been lifted long ago as well. It's very important that you understand Michelle Frakes and Amar Lawler. There's another lawsuit coming, a civil lawsuit. It's my understanding in a text I received tonight that that's been approved by the judge to go ahead because of all of the stuff that was done to those people when they reported activities down at day treatment where they were assaulted and so forth, and it was not liked by the administration, so they basically fired them. We'll see where that goes in court. The court case in the other situation is not over. It's probably going to go to the Supreme Court. The appellate court turned it down 2-1. We'll see what the Supreme Court does. But you know, all of this litigation, all of these lawyer fees, it's just ridiculous that you can think that Lathan needs a raise. No, she needs help. Thank you.
General Parker? Okay, thank you. Dan Adler?
Members of the audience and members of the board, Dr. Lathan, I appreciate the opportunity to speak tonight. I'd like to start by thanking you for your public service. I know that things, especially in the last year, have been very contentious. But I, for one, I value public service, and I really do appreciate all the time that both you and the audience members take here to ensure that our students and our community get the best possible schools that we can. The second point I kind of want to drive home is I really want to encourage you to vote no on agenda item 15. I happened to also be at the meeting at the end of last June, and I think the best and maybe most coarse way to describe the atmosphere was very tense. I know there's been a lot of back and forth and a lot of energy spent by the board to try and address this. How best do we accept public input? And it's a very important issue to me, and I know it is to you. I think starting off, kind of going into the new school year with the first policy really out of the gate, reducing the amount of time that someone can speak, it might not be a big deal, but I don't know that it sets the right tone. I think right now is the time for us to set the tone that we move forward together. And I know there's probably other things in the works about how do we best incorporate public input, but I think now is the time to lean in rather than to knock out about 40% as somebody's opportunity to share what concerns them about our schools. So I just like for you to reaffirm your support for public input, which I definitely saw on display on that June meeting, and please vote no on agenda item 15. Thank you.
Thank you. Savino Sierra.
Savino Sierra, 1708 South Stanley. I hope if I go over a little over my time, you'll give me a little extra. I want to give you a report on, I'm deaf on the upkeep of our physical plants in this district. So I'm going to enlighten you a little bit. I'm going to talk on Tree Wind School. The entrance on the east side, 3 and 4, need painting. Entrance doors, main entrance needs paint. Pillars are dirty and stained. Bottom cement around the bottom there is corroding and eroding and needs to be painted. Them are those pillars that are made out of cement for design, and they need to be painted over because they've been stained with, I don't know, maybe somebody threw some white paint on them. And the pillars are dirty. Okay, west side, these are entrances, 7 and 8. Entrance doors need painting. entrance door 9 needs painting. Steps and landing need painting and treatment. This is the steps that are made out of wood, never been painted, and the doors are in bad shape. Number 10, entrance doors are corroded. In fact, they're rusty at the bottom, and they're really corroded. They should be replaced. Entrance 11 and 12 need paint. The doors need painting. Work shed needs to be enlarged. You can hardly move if you put the outdoor equipment in there. 14, entrance 14, doors and panels above the doors need painting. Main gas pipe to shut-off valve, paint needed to paint that. Entrance 17, downspout cable and cover needs to be painted. On the north side, 18th entrance, bad shape. 2 of the 3 doors should be replaced where they look like they kicked them in. Them are I didn't know, but they're made out of pressed wood, I think. Another thing I noticed, garbage barrels should be painted the same color to look like we got class. 20 and 21 entrance should be painted. South side, the downspouts rusty. Fins on brick walls should be painted too. Metal boxes on brick walls should be treated and painted because they're all rusty, and that rust comes down on the bricks and stains the bricks. And also, we should have a full-time yard man around there. You don't have one. And the parking lot should be stripped. Entrance to the office inside has chunks of plaster off hallway side where I think they're cement blocks that have plaster over it. And they didn't put any door stops to catch the doors, and the door handles just busted a lot of that plaster all to heck, you know. And, you know, at the city council, I always rant and rave that you don't do stuff for the first ward down there. And the school board doesn't either, you know, and that's one of the responsibilities of you board members and the superintendent to oversee all that, you know, and this is why I say that it isn't being done, and this is why I'm going to ask again, the superintendent should resign. Thank you.
Thank you. Kathleen Deffenbaugh.
Rudeness is the weak person's imitation of strength. I am so disappointed with the behavior from the Horseshoe last meeting. The conduct was unbecoming of a superintendent. It was unbecoming of elected board members. There's been lots of words thrown around by our superintendent about forgiveness and trust and coming together, with no action from this superintendent on those words. The scuttle that I hear that Laura Patel is being considered to be reappointed to this open board seat is appalling. It is a slap in the face to the constituents who voted 70% to 30% for her to be gone. I take it that this is definitely a rumor and that you are not considering this. What will that say to your constituents who elected you, ladies and gentlemen? You need to think long and hard about that one. Giving a raise to someone who's not doing their job is absolutely fiscal irresponsibility. And also, respect is a two-way street. The unprofessionalism that you talk about from us here at the podium, I've been at every board meeting minus one since December 7th. I have seen very little unprofessional people here at this podium. We come here every week to tell you what is going on in the district that worries us, that concerns us as parents, as grandparents, and as tax-paying citizens. And that is our First Amendment right and our God-given right, because our children's education is the most important thing in their young lives. Are you okay, Mr. Crawford? It is very important that we remember we only get one shot at their young lives and their education. We don't get do-overs, ladies and gentlemen. And if it's screwed up the first time, they're the ones who pay. What happened at Charter Oak is worse than appalling, it's worse than disgusting, and any educator outside of District 150 that knows about it cannot believe what went on there. And agreed, this board allowed it to happen. Sharon Cruz is a passionate educator who loves education. She loves her students. Her students love her. What happened to her at this last board meeting is disgusting. It's despicable. And it's absolutely maddening that it was not in the newspaper. Nobody wrote about it. Nobody reported it. But we all witnessed it. I've been sitting here month after month listening to people talk about so-called rumors about our superintendent and how she behaves behind closed doors. That meeting, it came out and we all saw it. Every single one of us sitting here, and including her cronies sitting out there now. Your bullying behavior, Ms. Lathan, has been seen by all of us. You owe her and Mr. Sierra an open apology at best. And sadly, we know that this board and this administration rarely ever apologizes for anything because you are never in the wrong. It's always us. Open meetings, cutting speaking times, that also is wrong. We have a right to come up here and speak to you. And yes, 5 minutes, it is really hard to get out what we need to say. You might want to consider having a town hall meeting sometime and let us come up and ask you questions. But I doubt that will ever happen, because you never answer questions. You may try to silence our voices, but I'm here to tell you we are not going to go away quietly. This broken train wreck of a district and a school board needs overhauled, and post haste.
Thank you. Dan DeGaulle.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm Dan DeGaulle. I'm speaking on behalf of Change 150. In April of this year, Change 150 asked the voters of the 3rd District to vote for a candidate who had publicly stated that she would not serve in the role if elected. While that made for a very interesting election, in the end, the voters agreed with us 3-1 that change was indeed needed in the district. So in alignment with our core values of building a culture of collaboration and our value of building a coalition with community organizations and groups, we assembled an independent vetting committee to find a replacement candidate. That committee was comprised of members of the NAACP, the Teachers Union and Staff Union, former district administrators, a former board member, and a parent. We built a process, and we trusted that process to produce the best candidate to represent the people, those voters who had given us their trust in April. Our team couldn't be more pleased with the committee's recommendation of Dan Adler. You saw him a little earlier tonight for that seat. And on Thursday, June 5th, Change 150 formally endorsed him for the Board of Education seat. While we understand that the board is not obligated under the letter of the law to appoint our endorsed candidate, we come before you today to formally ask you to appoint Dan in the spirit of the election that has led to this nomination. Dan's values and beliefs regarding the district are in close alignment with what we've heard from our supporters and what we've publicly stated as our values. He's a parent of 2 children in the district, so he clearly has skin in the game. And he wants the best possible educational outcomes for all of Peoria's children. He believes in strengthening communication and community engagement because he understands that as parents, taxpayers, and voters, we're all stakeholders in the district, and all of us, whether we have children who attend the district schools or not, have a vested interest in the successful public education system here in Peoria. So with that, please appoint Dan Adler to the vacant Board of Education seat. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeff Atkins-Dutro.
Good evening, everybody. Jeff Atkins-Dutro, President of the Peoria Federation of Teachers Local 780 and proud English teacher at Peoria High School, the pride of the city. I wanted to speak to item 15. Instead of looking for ways to limit public speaking time at board meetings, maybe look at opening up other opportunities via other venues, maybe expand on what you do at Parent University, for instance. I'd say as far as these meetings go, the taxpayers deserve at least 5 minutes each per meeting, and I think 5 minutes is fairly standard for governmental meetings such as this. I'd again encourage the district to take its union up on our offer to help construct or restructure the district's strategic plan. If you get input on the front end, you'll have buy-in on the back end, and this should include members of the community as well. Then I'd have each union, each stakeholder come to one of these board meetings to report out. You could give us the 3 minutes if you would like. Have each entity report out what it is doing to help 150 reach the goals they helped create. There should be a custodian up here, bus driver, secretary, aide, counselor, PTA president, retiree, etc. Here's what we're doing. Here's how we're working with everyone else to achieve goals A, B, and C. What we can't do as a district is have an esoteric set of goals saying if you only got it, you'd understand. If you only understood, you'd be on board. The stakeholders need to be actively involved in the process from alpha to omega. That's what we call in our field engagement, and it is critical. As public educators, we're charged with educating everybody. That's a big deal, and it's something we should be proud of. At the same time, it's not something we as a district can pull off on our own. It takes the commitment and support of the community at large. Hence, we can't afford to have our stakeholders not involved in the strategic plan. That's one of those double negative things English teachers tell you not to use because it's almost impossible to understand. Everyone should be involved is another way of saying that. Pathways to Prosperity was a good start, and allowing stakeholders to take part in the strategic plan, I think, would keep that ball going. And I'm going to take off my union hat for a moment and put on my collar. And I'd just like to ask what you think of the idea of Pray 150 on August 23rd, I think that's a Sunday, asking every church, temple, synagogue, etc. to pray just a brief but meaningful prayer for the students and for the public education in Peoria. Thank you.
Thank you. Cheryl Budzinski.
Good evening, Cheryl Budzinski, 623 West Stratford Drive. I attend most of your meetings as an observer for League of Women Voters. I also attend 4 different public meetings, and each one of them has a different public participation policy. So I applaud you dealing with this at the beginning of the year. And I will disagree. This is not a step down with the amount of time, because as Committee of the Whole meetings, you had even less minutes to speak at Committee of the Whole meetings for citizens. So I would encourage you to go with the 3-minute limit. I think that people can speak within that time limit. If they've got a lot of information or something new, they can email each of you. I have emailed most of you, and sometimes I get responses, and most of the times I don't expect a response. But there are other avenues that they could get a hold of you. I've never tried calling you, but, that's a possibility. I guess I would like to see more of that. Some alternatives, like Mr. Dutro said, of how conversations can go back and forth with board members and citizens. I think it's wonderful that citizens are so excited and want to tell you what they think of the school districts, and they're so bought into the concept of citizen participation. But I guess I would be happy with the 3 minutes. I do want to thank you for standardizing your meeting times and locations. I think that was wonderful. I think what we all have in common, and I guess if we could all think about that, is that we want the citizens to be successful, and that's been said before tonight. And I think that we just need to remember that when we speak back and forth. But I do encourage you to stay with the 3 minutes. I think that I like hearing what the citizens have to say. I write down their names and what they speak about, and sometimes people ask me about that because they know I go to your meetings. So I'm sure you want to hear what they have to say, but 3 minutes, I think, can take care of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Lathan, do you have any responses? Okay. Do any board members have any responses they want to make? Okay, that takes us on to information items. We'll continue with those now. Our second one is the grading policy administrative procedure. Dr. Lathan?
Yes, Mr. Delansky and Ms. Tan would come up, please. As they're coming up, over the past 2 years, we had a committee of teachers, principals, central office administrators that worked on revising the administrative procedure as it relates to grades. So this is our first time out with that, and so we're asking for some support as we present this, and then we will make future changes as we move along over the course of the next several years with input from our staff members. And just to say, we also shared and emailed this out to every district parent last week, a copy of the draft. And I personally only heard from one parent as it relates to the feedback on the draft that was being proposed. So we do welcome that feedback. And so thank you to that parent that sent me the email addressing some concerns.
While the screen is lowering, I'd like to publicly thank all the teachers, administrators, union representation we had on the grading committee policy over the past 2 years. It was a committee based on primary, middle, high school teachers, primary, middle, high school administrators, union representation, and all of them volunteered their time for all of those meetings. So I'd like to publicly thank them for all their time. And based on what this policy is based on, I shouldn't say that, administrative procedure is based on the development of all our ideas put into one. It does not represent one person's individual philosophy or culture. So I'm briefly going to highlight the changes that we went through as we recommended this policy. So first of all, for just reading, I'm having trouble reading in the dark here. The purpose of the grading committee is to communicate a variety of, I'm sorry, I'm having trouble reading, my eyes are old. Evaluation of what students demonstrate they know and are able to confirm it towards meeting the Illinois state learning standards and district expectations, as well as to provide a basis for both student and teachers to reflect upon teaching and learning. I just want to make a statement is that the Common Core values have now been implemented into the Illinois learning standards and are part of that document, so we didn't feel we needed to add Common Core standards into that message. Next, going down, the highlights are in red. The kindergarten, the grading scale has remained the same based on the recommendations of the teachers. That has not changed. The change in the administrative procedure for kindergarten was that, and we utilized it this past year, is that kindergartens will have a standard-based report card that is determined by the district, and those standards will be utilized, and hopefully we hope to expand that over the next few years as we develop into first, second, third grade, et cetera. Any questions on that page?
So is the change that kindergartners are not going to receive letter grades?
They receive standardized base report, so basically they get meet, exceeds, and they don't get letter grades.
Okay.
So basically it's based on skill sets. Okay. Going down to excused absences, basically the previous administrative procedure was kind of vague. We kind of went into more detail. And for a non-attendance day for excused absence, I'm sorry, I'm going to go backwards one step. Used to be that homework was allowed to be up to 25% of a student's total grade per grading period. The committee recommended that we reduce that to 15%. So students who didn't have access to all the resources at home to get these things done at home, it didn't penalize them as much as 25%. So that was the rationale behind that move.
Just a question. Where'd the 10% go?
It went into the other pieces of the grade, 25%, up to 25% of the total grade of that grading period. So that 15%, teachers can use that for homework. The other 85% is for classwork and grades.
Okay.
They weight that individually.
Okay. But it's not any discrete portion of that?
No.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay. The language has changed, and all missing assignments shall be marked as a 0. It used to say in the old policy marked as missing in the Skyward grade book, and that would be for unexcused and excused absences. A student who is present but did not submit an assignment shall provide an opportunity to make up the assignment. The earned grade on a missing assignment will lose 1 letter grade per day until the assignment turns into an F. An assignment is considered late if not handed in when due in class. It's just language to clarify the teacher's position. Then we go to excused absences, which is just a clarification, an expansion for what practices we usually already have. For non-attendance day to be excused, a note, including an email, would be acceptable, would be required from a student's recognized guardian within 2 attendance days of the student's return to school. Excused students will be given a 0, and the assignment will be labeled as missing. The student will be allowed 2 days for every 1 day of excused absence to submit missing assignments. A student who completes the assignment within the timelines shall receive full credit. The grade would then replace a 0. Work not submitted would still be given a 0. Any questions about excused absences?
Is that a change from what it was?
No, it's just an expansion.
As far as the percentage that they could get, do they always receive a 0, or do they used to receive?
We used to list it solely as missing in Skyward. Now we put it as a 0, and then it just reflects that change. Unexcused absences? I'm sorry.
Because it's counted as a 0, does that mean it plays into the average?
Correct. And then, so hopefully it encourages students to come in and get their work done, get it turned up, and raise their average back up. Anything else?
No.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I wanted to know if it was part of determining the average.
Okay, unexcused absences. This is where we spent a lot of our discussion time, and this is basically the development we came up with. Students with an unexcused absence, including suspensions, will be given a 0, but they should be allowed to make up work for full credit. Students will be allowed 1 day for every unexcused absence, in-school suspension, or out-of-school suspension. Student who completes the assignment within the time guidelines shall receive full credit. The grade would then replace the 0 given. Work not turned in will still be given a 0. On the 10th day of absence from any course, the student would automatically receive an F in that course for the semester. If the absence occurs at the end of the grading period, student will be given a 0. Student will complete the assignment in the timeline given and receive full credit. The grade would then replace the 0, and the new grade would be issued. Work not submitted would still be given 0. Students would have until 10 a.m. on the last day of teacher's work day for grading period forward to turn in missing assignments. For seniors at the end of school who is scheduled to graduate and is absent at the end of the final grading period and meets the guidelines for excused absence, the student must complete all coursework requirements by 10 a.m. on the last day of the teacher's work day to receive credit in order to participate in graduation exercises. Students' name may not appear in the program if they did not qualify at that time. So any questions about the unexcused absence?
Will you explain what the change is? Because this one is a change from what it was.
That is a change. That is a change in the recommendation. It used to be that students that turned in work for the assignments and scored under a 50%, the lowest F they would get would be a 50%. That has been taken out. Students will receive a 0 if they don't turn in the work, and they get their actual grade when they turn in the work. The intent of the teachers wanting them to have opportunity to get full credit is that if there's engagement going on in the classroom, student is gone, for example, for a 3-day suspension. That loss of time in the classroom should be valuable loss of time, but they would be given an opportunity to make up that work and receive full credit so that it didn't hopefully impact their entire grading semester. Research, based on research that was brought in by some members of the committee, was that once you start piling zeros into a student's report card with giving them no options, that they have a tendency to be self-defeating and they stop working altogether. And so it just perpetuates itself. This way, the compromise was basically give them an opportunity, take away the excuse, give them the opportunity to get their work in 1 day for a day of suspension in order to give them an opportunity to be successful. With still the overall ceiling being if they miss 5 days of the grading period, they would still receive an F in that course. So it's kind of balances out both sides.
I think the old policy was 9 days of unexcused absences.
The old policy was 9 in a semester. We went 5 per grading period, and a total of 20. That's based off the numbers.
45 days in the past as it related to absences, and so we tightened that up a little bit because they were missing a large number of days out. So it's 5 days per grading period for 10 per semester.
Okay.
A total of 20 for the entire school year.
And the prior one was 9, just says 9 unexcused absences.
Per semester, it used to be 18, and that was based off the number for truancy that we used with state when we used to drop kids at 18 for unexcused absences.
That makes sense then, thank you.
That's where that number came from. Any other questions on that? Okay, forfeiture of credit, course credit, this is just kind of outlines, this is an addition. Basically, students K-8, students with more than 5 absences in a grading period including unexcused and out-of-school suspensions will be subject to an F. For the grading period, in excess of 20 absences during the school year, a student could be subjected to retention. Grades 9 through 12, students with more than 5 absences in the grading period will be subject to an F. In each course, the absences occurred. If a student has more than 10 absences in the semester, including unexcused and out-of-school suspension, the student will not receive credit for that course. Any questions on that part? We're going to go to teachers wanted to include an appeal process for extenuating circumstances. Parents of students who believe excessive absences causing failure to participate in graduation, exercise, sports eligibility, or retention or loss of credit are due extenuating circumstances, documentation required, may appeal the decision to the principal or his or her designee in writing. And basically, we will develop a form that we will use, that our principals will use to standardize that form, and we will utilize that form.
Question then on, the actual grading policy has levels in the current policy of level 1, 2, and 3, or I'm sorry, 1 and 2, which deal with appeals. So is there going to be any intention here to reconcile the appeals process with what the policy says? Because the administrative procedure is one thing, the policy itself is another.
And that's coming, that should be within the next month.
Okay.
That'll be that whole entire section 6. All of that is part of section 6, which is instruction.
Right.
And so we need to bring that to the policy.
It's just making sure they don't contradict each other. Yeah.
Right, yeah. Ultimately, I think you'll get that document, that change down the road. Any questions about that? Other than that, the changes are very minimal. If you go to section 7, we have eliminated the course requirement for, used to be in previous administrations that if you did not meet one course requirement, you could fail the entire semester. For example, if you did not turn in a term paper or you plagiarized a term paper, you could be failed for the entire semester, not just the grading period. So basically, if there's plagiarism that's proven on a documentation, it is failure of the assignment only. So if they failed the term paper and term paper was 60% of that grading period, then they got 60% F. Other than that, all the other changes, there are no other additional changes. Basically, the policy stands, the administrative procedure stands as it is. Any questions on any of those?
Board members have any questions or comments? Ms. Costick?
For class of 2015, on the minimum requirements to move on to the next grade, from the 9th to the 10th, it's a minimum of 6 units must be earned. Can you kind of explain what the units, is that like, it's a credit?
They're credit, they're class credits. It used to be that students were labeled freshman, sophomore, junior, senior by their years
Right.
in school. Not in order to be qualified as a sophomore, you have to have more than 6 credits. So basically, it's how many credits they earn, that gives their standing within the scope of the school.
So the credits or / units are remaining the same?
Nothing has
per
changed in that. Yeah,
per
nothing
course.
was changed with
Okay.
with that process.
Mr. Cloyd?
The prior policy said to be classified as 10th grade, students must earn 4.5 credits, and now it's 6. So have we changed that?
These are,
You changed that in 2011, spring of 2011, the board voted on new graduation requirements.
now we're just making it official within its administrative procedure, because we haven't brought this to you before.
You voted on it, well, they voted.
Yeah, this shows a revision of January 3rd, 2013, and it still shows that number, so.
But that could have been another part of the revision that was made for something else, not
Okay.
necessarily this particular.
So
part.
again, we need to make sure those are reconciled, that's all. Because the numbers are different in both.
Right. The numbers are the same in the high school books. They coincide with what's currently in issue.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? Dr. Lathan, could you briefly give us an idea of how the teachers were involved in this process?
Yes, for the, each school, overall at each grade level, elementary, middle school, and high school, we had representatives that participated. There were classroom teachers, there were building administrators, union leaders, and central office administrators. So for 2 years, a committee met. In May, after the committee made their final recommendations, they presented those recommendations to me. I took them to the principals, asked the principals for additional feedback, because one of the, of course, requirements would be that the principals would be enforcing the procedure. And at that meeting with principals in May, they wanted to go back one more time and get some more feedback from some of their teachers, because teachers had heard, you know, when you leave a committee meeting, they heard that the decision was final. So we took it back. Every principal held a meeting with their staff. There was an agenda, sign-in sheet, and then we asked them to provide us additional feedback by June 5th. So we got that additional feedback on June 5th, and then we looked at that information, and then we went through the sections and kind of summarized what different schools were saying. And then this is how we arrived at the final draft that you have here in front of you tonight. Once again, 100%, we couldn't please everyone, because there were many people that felt, for example, if a student is suspended, that they should not be allowed to make up the work for full credit. There were different opinions and thoughts around excused, unexcused absences, how many days students should be allowed for the makeup work, or the appeals process, or should we send a note, no note, phone call. But we tried to just overall go with the majority of the input that we received, and this is, like I said, the first stab at it, and we'll look at it over the next several years. And then actually, about a month ago, I think, is Jeff still here, when the final draft was completed, we asked the union to take one last look. And then last week, they submitted their additional changes, and those were incorporated in the changes that were made in front of you tonight.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions on this presentation by board members? Thank you very much. That brings us to purchase orders over $2,500. Are there any questions? Mr. Cloyd?
I need to go to the listing, I'm sorry. Take a minute to get there. There's one item that, sometimes paper is faster, you know. Oh, boy.
Chris has paper.
Do you have it? Do you have it? Yeah. Okay, let me take a look. Well, it was a big number, $670-some thousand for something, and I didn't recognize the supplier, and I just wanted to know what that was. I'm sorry to put you on the spot. I looked at it today. I don't see it in there now, but
There was one, there was an insurance. Is that it?
it could have been it. That sounds right.
I think,
Okay.
yeah.
That one was mentioned in his update in the agenda, so I don't know if
Yeah.
that's the one you were thinking of or not.
That might be it. Okay. That was, it just didn't, when I looked at this report, I didn't connect the two, so, okay. Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Wilcoxon? Seeing none, that ring, oh,
It's insurance.
Okay, thank you.
Arthur Gallagher.
That's it. Yeah.
that brings us to report a request under the Freedom of Information Act and status of such request, Dr. Lathan.
Since our last board meeting report on June 16, 2004, we received 8 new Freedom of Information Act requests. Of these new requests, 4 were filled. There were 6 pending requests noted on the June 16, 2014 board report. Those requests were filled. We received 83 requests for this calendar year.
Thank you. That brings us to the consent agenda. Reverend Butler, would you summarize the gifts to the school district for this meeting, please?
Yes, gifts to the school district for this meeting total $3,521. Year-to-date, $3,521. And the proposed action is that the Board of Education accept the following donations and letters of appreciation to be sent to the donors. Just want to make note that 2,200 of that 3,500 involves a donation of 24 ukuleles. And also with the gifts to the district, want to make mention that there's a donation totaling $20,689 made to the District 150 Foundation.
Thank you. The other items on the consent agenda tonight are payment of bills. Number 3 is the Human Resources Report. The proposed action is the appointment, employment, compensation, performance, resignation, retirement, or discharge of an employee. Number 4 is payment for travel. Number 5 is the FY 2015 contract between the University of Illinois and School District 150. The proposed action is that the Board of Education authorize a mutual agreement between the Board of Trustees of the University of Illinois and District 150 for diagnosis of special education children with health and/or physical impairments at a cost not to exceed $5,000. This agreement will also guarantee professional development from the assigned physician from the University of Illinois on topics such as movement disorders and autism for staff related to serving students with disabilities. This agreement will be funded through the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act grant. Number 6 is the Family Corps contract approval with counseling for counseling services. The proposed action is that the Board of Education approve the attached contract with Family Corps to provide 9 full-time family school liaisons for the school-based attendance intervention and suspension expulsion prevention services to at-risk students attending Calvin Coolidge for 1 full-time, Woodrow Wilson 1 full-time, Manual Academy 2 full-time, Hines 1 full-time, Franklin 1 full-time, Lincoln 1 full-time, Keller .5, Thomas Jefferson .5, Northmore .5, and Charter Oak .5. The total cost of this one-year contract is $386,478, which includes services in a case management format in order to address the needs of at-risk students. Funding for Family Corps will be through Title I. Item 7 is the FY 2015 Unity Point Health Methodist Hospital Tutoring Contract. The proposed action is that the administration be authorized to renew an agreement with Unity Point Health Methodist for the provision of hospital tutoring services during the 2014-15 school year at a cost not to exceed $77,654.48. 8 is the FY 2015 OSF tutoring contract renewal. The proposed action is that the administration be authorized to renew an agreement with OSF for the provision of hospital tutoring services during the 2014-15 school year at a cost not to exceed $44,926.30. Number 9 is a memorandum of understanding with Local 780 regarding the revision of extra pay for extra assignments. Appendix C, the proposed action is that the Board of Education approve the attached memorandum of understanding between the Board of Education, Peoria Public School District Number 150, and the Peoria Federation of Teachers, IFT, AFT, AFL-CIO Local 780, as related to changes in extra pay for extra assignments. This memorandum of understanding documents for the elimination of golf pass purchases for golf coaches and revises Appendix C of the 2013 through 16 collective bargaining agreement. This MOU will be in effect from July 21st, 2014 through June 13th, 2016. Item 10 is the approval of a settlement agreement and general release with the Peoria Federation of Teachers Local 780. The proposed action is that the Board of Education approve the attached settlement agreement and general release. This settlement agreement is entered into by the Board of Education of Peoria School District Number 150 and the Peoria Federation of Teachers, IFT, AFT, AFL-CIO Local 780, as complete resolution to all claims and controversies arising from 3 grievances dated July 24th, 2013, August 29th, 2013, and February 27th, 2014, as related to the definition of an excellent final teacher practice rating and placement of tenured teachers on a summative evaluation cycle. Item 11 is the award of oil bid for district school buses and vehicles. The proposed action is that the Board of Education approve that Rilco Lubricants and Services be awarded the oil bid for the school year ending June 30th, 2015. This oil is to be used for district school buses and vehicles. Bids were opened on July 9th, 2014. Number 12 is the award of the tire bid for district school buses. The proposed action is that the Board of Education approve that Peoria Tire be awarded the tire bid for the school year ending June 30th, 2015. Tires to be used for District 150 school buses. Bids were opened on July 9th, 2014. Sale of surplus property. The proposed action is that the Board of Education authorizes the Chief Financial Officer to provide public notice and offer for sale the property commonly identified as 2102 North Prospect at a minimum price of $5,000, and should the property not sell at or above the minimum, engage a real estate broker to assist with the sale of the property in accordance with the Illinois School Code. Item 14 is the pay increase for the superintendent. The proposed action is that the Board of Education approve a 2% salary increase effective July 1st, 2014 for the superintendent. The salary increase falls in line with increases given to other district employees. Number 15 is the audience opportunity to address the board. The proposed action is that the Board of Education approve the length of time for each speaker to address the board be limited to 3 minutes at all open board meetings effective August 11th, 2014. This concludes the consent agenda. I am going to ask that we pull item 15, the audience opportunity to address the board. I'd like to have that discussion and vote separate from the rest of the consent agenda. Are there any other items that board members want pulled? Mr. Cloyd.
Yes, I'd like to have number 14 pulled for separate vote too, please.
Right here. 7.
Item number 6 and item number 7, I'd like to have pulled for a separate vote, please.
Okay. Any others? Okay, then I need a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda except for items 6, 7, 14, and 15.
So moved.
Second.
Are there any questions or comments on the other items that have not been pulled? Did you want to,
I don't know if it's appropriate to speak, but for number 7, that's not really, you're not paying them, that's them covering the costs of teacher.
okay, well, we'll
get
ask
to
a
it.
question when
We'll
we
get to it.
when we go to
We'll
vote
get
on
to
it,
it.
okay? Okay. Did you want to talk about the contract between the University of Illinois and the school district? That one hasn't been
Right,
pulled.
several are, actually, number 5 Number 7 and number 8 are standard contracts that the board approves every year. Number 5 is between U of I. It was 2 years ago, it was another physician that we used, so this is a different physician. But once again, it's if we need any additional services for students that have IEPs, we set a maximum amount of $5,000 there. Once again, this is an annual contract that the board approves. We use IDEA funding for that. As it relates to number 7, which is the tutoring.
You wanna wait till we get that one, 'cause she pulled that one.
Okay.
Okay. Is there any other questions or comments on any of the ones that we have not pulled? Did you still have a question, Mrs. Costick?
No,
Okay.
my tablet's not.
Okay. Seeing nothing else, would you call the roll on the consent agenda except for 6, 7, 14, and 15?
Aye.
Mr. Crawford?
Aye.
Mrs. Ross?
Aye.
Mr. Floyd?
Aye.
Mrs. Butler?
Aye.
Mrs. Holford?
Aye.
6 ayes, 0 nays.
Okay, that brings us to number 6, which is the family court contract approval for counseling services. Were there questions on that one?
Just a little bit more.
Do you need a motion?
Pardon?
Do you need a motion?
Oh, I'm sorry, yes. Could I have a motion and a second first?
On 7, on 6, you mean?
Yes.
So moved.
Okay, I'm sorry, now go ahead.
In regards to family core, my question is, can you explain the role of a family school liaison individual?
Yes, they are providing, first of all, each school is utilizing their Title I monies. They made a decision as a school community how they would utilize those monies. That family liaison provides additional counseling services to the students. They serve on the PBIS committee, case management services for at-risk students or students that have been identified by the school team that could be identified academically, identified through discipline, and they can provide those services. So this will be our 3rd year, I believe, for these Title I schools to utilize the services of Family Core.
Now, these individuals they're referred? Are they referred?
They are housed at the
at-risk?
schools. The staff members by Family Core are housed at the school, and they work. They're just like another staff member that is housed at the school. They meet with the school team, and then they identify the students that they're going to work with. Some of their activities are school-wide activities. Some are for identified students.
Okay.
And Family Core is the organization that we're contracting with. Family Core has been in our district for, I don't know, I've been here 4 years. I know they've been here 4 years, probably more than 4 years. We've increased the number of services that they provide or the number of people based on the request and the feedback that we received from building principals and also the discipline data that we looked at. So that was a request for them. So when we make a decision to bring this before the board, that school community has already said, yes, we want to continue with these services. You'll notice that this year Peoria High is not on here because they paid for it in the past out of their SIG monies. Remember, those dollars ended this school year. Manual actually is funding 2 FTEs based on the amount of money that they have in their Title I funds. Their 2 Family Core members have taken students on field trips. Those students identified in our red area, and Ms. Jenkins is here now, so she can correct me if I'm wrong. But once again, the principals and the school teams, it could be a school social worker, school counselor, but they sit down and identify the needs of the students that they have and what role they want that Family Core liaison to play at their school.
I think that any time that we're talking about at-risk children and children that are identified as having some types of issues going on in the school, I think one of the things that I would like to see is that when we have Family Core individuals of this type coming in, I would like to see data on the effect of what has been the services that have been provided. For instance, when they're talking about discipline, I like to see where this discipline, what the impact is, the numbers that have been, based on the children that have been referred. I like to see numbers on, has it really had an effect in helping these children? That's kind of what I really want to see.
Okay.
Okay?
Mrs. Ross?
Well, just to kind of dovetail on that, I was looking at the contract itself, and I have the history on this contract. When we first started it, of course, like she says, it had, Dr. Lathan said, it has grown I think it was around $38,000 initially. I have to go back and pull my research. But according to the contract, we're saying that each family school liaison will have a caseload capacity of 12 students. And so are you saying in addition to the case management of the 12 students that there's, and I realize you have two categories. You have a prevention and supportive services category, and sometimes that just means, that would mean making a phone call, doing a referral or whatever with the students. Then there's category 2 is intervention and treatment. So would they have only 12 students that they're working with?
They're working with more than 12 students. If you look at the different categories on page 2 of the information that was in the contract, they spend most of their time in category 1, but also in category 2 where you see the capacity of 12 students, but they're working with well beyond 12 students. I don't know if you want to speak to what they did at Manual and the number of students that they referred to since you're here. I appreciate that.
And while you're coming up, I'm just gonna say, you know, for the last few years, I've asked, what are the outcomes? You know, if I have an identified 12 students in the 9th grade that I'm working with, and then those 12 students go to the 10th grade, I mean, is the behavior better? Are their grades better? Or is there more parental involvement? I'm just asking.
We look at all of that.
What are the outcomes?
We look at all of those outcomes.
And does that play into whether or not they get the grant again the next year?
Yes, that plays into the data that they look at. You want to talk about it from the ULT process and making that decision when the school team makes a decision of how they would like to spend their Title I dollars as far as what services they want to contract, for us, whether it's an agency or they want to spend more money in professional development, more money in parental involvement.
Thank you. The couple things that I would add that Dr. Lathan has already explained is the two liaisons that we had working at Manual. We do have the data, and that's one of the reasons that we decided to continue with their efforts. One of our professionals works with our students, our parents that are our moms, expected moms, and one works, and she has a caseload of about close to 30. Don't like to admit that, but she's got at least 30 students that she's working with from 9th grade all the way up. And then also our other person has a caseload of at least 25 to 35 students, and that's a very fluid number, and that number based off of the work that they're doing, whether it's truancy, whether it's, and we usually identify our students based on the red students, and when I say red, that's needing more than one intervention that can be done on a global method, meaning that they need that Tier 2, Tier 3 intervention. So these are students that have a lot of needs and cannot just be handled by the universal level, meaning that the teachers can't just handle it themselves. They need some direct instruction, some direct supports. Our liaisons help the parents to expected mothers to go get their needed supplies, all of the things that they need that they wouldn't otherwise know. So they actually are doing some training, and being on campus actually helps them to be able to get exactly what they need on a daily basis to get them to school and then offer them that extra support that they wouldn't usually get. So their caseload is well over 12, but it's a very fluid number. And the grant through Family Core has some very specific criteria that they have to meet to be able to keep those students on their caseloads. And so as a principal, I monitored those two liaison staff members and made sure that they were meeting the criteria of the grant from Family Core, and then they are evaluated on whether or not they're meeting that criteria. Does that help?
Mr. Clay?
Yes. How does this relate to the responsibilities of the homeschool facilitators that we have? Are they similar, or are they working together, or how does that fit?
Currently, last year we had 2 homeschool facilitators at Peoria High and then 1 at Manual. And as far as the homeschool facilitators, they were conducting the home visits and also following and tracking a group of students. So the thing about our schools and the different needs of our students, it takes different individuals based on their strengths of the wraparound services that a particular student might need. And so that's kind of how it started with the homeschool facilitators, then it went to Family Core. Also, as it relates to Family Core, because I think one of the questions came up, well, they receive funding for United Way. They do receive grant funding for United Way to also support, but it's a portion of it. So if this position, let's say it was $57,000, I'm just giving an example, example, then we pay a portion. They might receive a grant from United Way. I know 2 years ago at Manual, they supported, one of the positions, they supported 100% from a grant that they received at United Way. So it is, we pay a portion, and if they receive grant funding, that grant funding also makes up for that.
Okay, thank you.
I just want to just clarify why I ask questions is because we do get into, sometimes we get into a habit of just renewing contracts and not asking any questions and not knowing what the results are. And, you know, when I ask those questions, I have a reason for it.
And we did, in your June, we provided this discipline data as it relates to progress by schools. So overall, you'll be able to see that discipline data. I mean, like I said, we look at that, the PBIS teams look at that at individual schools, but when they decide for a total school program what they need, they are utilizing that data also to make that decision.
So are these kind of pull-out services?
It's a combination. Sometimes they're pulling out and working with students. Sometimes they're in classrooms, or they could be hold lunchtime meetings with a different group of students. But once again, the needs vary from school to school, and as a school, they make those decisions on the role that that particular person will play in their school.
Thank you.
Ms. Costa?
Yes, I'd like to thank Mrs. Jenkins. Thank you for explaining that. Mr. Ross took my words, but many times, there are times when things come before us and we vote on them based on what we're reading. So it's really nice to be able to get in depth and find out exactly how the program or whatever runs, so that we know that the vote that we're giving is the vote that is needed in order to have success. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments on this item? Would you call the roll?
Mrs. Costick?
Aye.
Mr. Crawford?
Aye.
Mrs. Ross?
Aye.
Aye.
Mrs. Butler?
Aye.
Aye. Item 7 is the Unity Point Health Methodist Hospital tutoring contract. And Carla, were you explaining that the cost, that the $77,000 is not our cost?
Right, the idea is that both that one and then number 8 below, that is what the hospital gives us for having the personnel and supplies and such to work with the children that are in the hospital. But then in turn, we're charged for what children are there from the district. It's, you know, just kind of an exchange where,
Okay.
so for us, it would be less than, however much we used.
Okay.
All our costs are covered for the staff, and that's what these 2 contracts represent.
Okay. Ms. Costick?
The only question that I had was with the, for Unity Point, was that the teacher that is assigned there, is that a certified teacher from the district, or is that from certified teachers?
Yes, from the district.
From within the district, okay. That was the only question I had.
Okay. Any other questions or comments on this one?
Do we have a motion?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not into this yet.
I know.
I need a motion in a second.
I'll move it.
I'll second it.
Would you call the roll?
Mrs. Costick?
I'll eye it.
Crawford? Aye.
Mrs. Ross?
Aye.
Mr. Floyd?
Aye.
Mrs. Butler?
Aye.
Aye.
Mrs. Sizer?
Okay, Item 14 is the pay increase for the superintendent. Could I have a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Are there any comments? Would you call the roll?
No, I do
Oh.
have a comment. I was waiting for others.
Okay.
Okay, and I would just say before we vote on this, although it's not part of the resolution, I believe the board has wisely decided not to provide bonus compensation for the superintendent. I've concluded that bonus compensation is inappropriate for any public school district. It is extremely difficult to develop appropriate methods and metrics for this form of compensation, and it has served mostly as an irritant, a negative focal point for the community. I recommend this board permanently abandon the practice of providing or offering executive bonuses. Now, regarding this issue, the district reported about a $5 million operating deficit for the school year just ended. And I realize this was not due to our increased spending. It was due to reductions in revenue from real estate taxes, less state funding, and reductions or termination of federal programs. I come from a long tradition of business that does not support raises for highly compensated senior executives when you operate at a deficit, regardless of the reasons. And finally, some of the district's community relationships took a big step backwards this year, and we've heard some of that tonight. All of us on the board, along with the superintendent, share that responsibility. In recent months, I believe some progress has been made, and that's a good thing. We need to do more in that regard. And the idea of public forums or a better use of the public parent university is a good step forward, and we should consider that. But even if we had not operated at a deficit, the unfortunate circumstances, those relationships alone, would have been enough for me to vote no on this resolution, as I will. Thank you.
Any other comments?
Yes.
Reverend Butler?
I quite differ from Mr. Cloyd, and I think when we look at what is in the best interest of education and we see those practices throughout the nation that help to bring greater effect upon education, I think we should utilize some of those practices as well. So I believe and I accept that we continue to look at bonuses where performance is due. I understand that we've been through a very rough year, but even as we all have talked about the things that have happened in this district, we looked at numerous things. We have considered the issue involving Charter Oak, but we've also have looked at our facilities, our technology, our professional development, all those things that now have only made this district better. And so the district has benefited from great leadership. And so, unlike you, I will be voting to support the increase.
Mr. Crawford?
I will likewise be voting to support the increase. I do acknowledge that some of the community relationships that they've been tattered this year, and we as board members bear some responsibility for that, and I hope to repair those in the future. And it has been a tough year, but I have continued to appreciate this administration's efforts with the leadership of Dr. Lathan in bringing more rigorous curriculum to our district, continue with an educational mission that we're going to offer the kids an excellent education. And just maybe a comment about the budget. While I too am concerned about our operating deficit, Dr. Kinney admonished us on his way out. He said, don't let this deficit scare you into walking away from all the efforts that you've made for the kids. I think that we have demonstrated fiscal, as Mr. Cloyd pointed out, we have demonstrated some fiscal responsibility on our end. It just so happens that the state finds itself in a very difficult position, which in turn puts us in a very difficult position. So while I fully expect that in the capable hands of Dr. Lathan and Mr. Wilcoxon, that we will see continued efforts in making sure our budgets work, I don't want to give up on those things that we've done for the kids. And so I will be supporting this resolution, but at the same time, we need to repair those relationships as this year goes on.
Anybody else? I just like to say that I will also be supporting it. Someone asked me the kind of sort of a question like this last week about some of the difficulties we've had in the last half of the year, and I think my answer to them was that is one snapshot in the whole picture of last year. I think we as a board looked at the whole year. Did we have some concerns? Of course we did, and those were discussed. But we accomplished things this year, and Dr. Lathan accomplished things this year. So I think as a board we looked at the whole picture, not just one or two things that happened that were very visible. So I too will be supporting it.
I will be supporting the increase. I wasn't 100% on the bonus structure because of the fact that I feel that bonuses should be based on things that are done above and beyond. The strategic plan that had been set before has been completed. Am I correct? So now it's time to look at other endeavors that need to be completed within this district that we may be able to base a bonus on in the future. But for right now, I do know, let me say this, I do realize that it has been a contentious year. But I had to look at everything else that had been done for the good of this district and the children in this community. We all have made mistakes over this year. But it's my intention to do better. And with that said, I'm going to end it, and I will be voting for a increase for Dr. Lathan.
Everybody's looking at me, so I guess.
Did you want to say anything? You don't have to, it's up to you.
Well, I know. I usually like to keep my mouth shut because I get in trouble when I open it. But I want to say that over the years, I mean, I have some history, a little bit of history, and I have something to compare what's happening now with what was happening then. And I'm going to tell you, it's 100%, in my opinion, better now than it was then, as far as systems in place, as far as, students having a level playing field to be able to get the education that they need, as far as providing the services that actually individual students need. Our major goal within the strategic plan was to prepare every student, and I'm paraphrasing, prepare every student for a future, basically. And I think we've put things in place to be able to do that. And constantly looking at, and there's an old saying, everybody knows that when you do the same thing and expect different results, it's kind of the definition of insanity, which we've been going through year after year. And so now things are different, and people are willing to look at what's working, what's not working, and to step back and reevaluate. And basically that's based on Dr. Lathan's leadership, whether we can really see it out front or not. We know it because she communicates, and this is first time superintendents ever communicated with me, communicates with us on issues and answer questions. I ask a lot of questions, and sometimes I get in trouble for that too, but I don't care. I'm old enough not to have to answer to anybody right now. But anyway, I will be supporting that, that increase, and it's just a small gesture of our appreciation to say, we're a good job. And I know it's a small gesture, but it's a gesture to say good job.
Okay, will you call the roll?
Mrs. Costa? Aye. Mr. Crawford?
Aye.
Mrs. Ross?
Aye.
Mr. Boyd?
No.
Mrs. Butler?
Aye.
Mrs. Whitmire?
Aye.
5 ayes, 1 nay, motion carried.
Thank you. That brings us to the last item, the audience opportunity to address the board, and I am going to make a couple of statements before I ask for the motion. We have been discussing this whole thing over the last few months, and even though no board members expressed this at the last meeting in June, I received communication, I think if not from most, if not all, either verbally or even in writing from all board members about changing the amount of speaking time to 3 minutes. So this is why this is on the agenda. We can make a motion second, then we can discuss it. You can either vote it up or down, we can amend it, we can postpone it, whatever you want to do, but I wanted to get the ball moving. But this was the one definitive thing out of our discussions that I heard from all board members. We can certainly do different things later on if we want to, but this is what's on here tonight, and so I'd ask for a motion and a second.
So moved.
Second.
So I don't know if board members have any comments, any questions, any
I have-
suggestions? Mrs. Ross?
Well, again, over the years, there's been different times and different changes within this particular process. And again, I want to hear from the public, but I think 3 minutes is long enough because someone said in the audience there's other avenues by which people can communicate to us. And so I think it's a win-win because we had a 2-minute at the committee of a whole, and we've now gone back to our schedule for 2 full board meetings, so 3 minutes at each meeting. When it used to be you could only speak 20 minutes on one specific topic. So we're not even limiting that. You can speak 2 minutes on any topic, for as long as you want, I guess, as long as you have a card in. So we're trying to standardize this and see how it works. But I think people always rise to the occasion. If it's 2 minutes or 3 minutes, they seem to get in what they want to say. So I'll be supporting it.
Mr. Crawford?
I can't support it as written. I think that, well, I know there are some regular commenters here that despite what they say, I think they do get enough floor time. But I'd hate to limit the person who comes here and has prepared and has some thoughtful information to share with us, and they're limited because maybe they're nervous or can't quite find their words when they're up in front on the podium. I think 5 minutes allows for that stumble. I think in some cases, 5 minutes in some of the information that's been provided me is really helpful. So I'd like to see it remain. And as I stated, I think last board meeting, our problem is not in terms of making this meeting more about the business of the board. It's up to us. I don't think it can be done by trying to limit audience comment or anything of that nature. We have to kind of control our meetings and make the discussion here more important, because I think for some who make regular comment, their comments are more important than the business of the board. So we're the ones who are going to control that. And I guess I don't see this as the avenue to do it. I'm a fan of free speech and giving people their say. Doesn't mean we have to listen. That's one of the adages of free speech. You have the right to say anything you want, but you do not have the right to be heard necessarily. At the same time, I do try to listen to every single one of you. Don't get me wrong. I sit here and listen attentively, but I'm a believer in the public comment system, and despite other avenues being available, I think there's something about addressing your public bodies that's important. So I kind of like 5 minutes. That's why I vote no.
As Mrs. Wolfmeyer said, we've all had time to think about this and be ready for this item on the agenda. I will be supporting it. As Mr. Crawford said, we do listen intently to what people say, and we welcome the comments of individuals to come. And likewise, Mrs. Ross, with it being said too that there are other avenues I've seen in this arena where when people have brought forth information about a particular item, then the cabinet is here, and sometimes immediately those things are addressed, so as that issue has more context to it, it's allowed to happen. So I think 3 minutes is enough time to bring forward what it is in particular that is concerning you, or you would like to see more response to, that sort of thing, knowing that you can, and after you introduce that, receive additional help, if not that night, later on. So I think in most cases, even when you watch some of the things on television, people in Congress and such, even they have to surrender to a limited amount of time in their representation of what all of their constituents want brought before the other members of Congress. So I think we can also structure and provide information in a way like that.
Anybody else? Okay, I did do a motion in a second, correct? Would you call the roll? Did I?
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead and call the roll.
Mrs. Costick? Aye. Mr. Crawford?
No.
Mrs. Ross?
Aye.
Mr. Floyd? Aye. Mrs. Butler?
Aye.
Mrs. Wolfmeyer?
Aye.
5 ayes, no nays, motion carries.
Okay. Before we go to presentation suggestions by board members, I apologize. I should have done this at the beginning of the meeting, even though Mr. Rettberg joined us at our last meeting. This is his first experience around the horseshoe, so welcome to the fray.
Thank you.
And Mr. Rettberg is our new in-house counsel, and we are looking forward to working with him. I hope in a couple of months he's still looking forward to working with us, but so welcome We appreciate you being here. Sure.
Say a word. I used to be a school board member up in Downers Grove a few years back, and so I've attended a lot of school board meetings.
For how many years?
17 years. And I have to say, I saw an amazing amount of passion tonight, both from the audience and from the board. I'm very impressed.
Thank you. Okay. Any presentations or suggestions by board members? Mr.
Yes,
Floyd?
it's me again. Just in light of our budget situation, I know we have a cycle for that and submitting a budget, but a lot of the things that are made as commitments are made in advance, and then the budget sort of recognizes those. And it would be really helpful to have some sort of a forecast of what our revenue is going to be this year, and if there are any significant commitments that are unmade at this point, we need to understand those before we vote on them in a session and then find out we're running down the same road again. We need to have a much crisper financial report quickly so that we know we are not running down another $5 million deficit. And if we are, then we need to be prepared to stop something. If the revenue isn't there, we need to stop doing some things.
Okay.
And I know that will be unpopular, but we can't continue to spend money that we do not get.
Okay, thank you. I think we can do that. Mrs. Ross?
In the comments from the audience tonight, they talked about the strategic plan and making sure that some of the public were involved in that. And I know you've heard me say that the previous strategic plan that I participated in and other members of the community also included community members, school personnel, board members, youth from some of our schools and that. So I would encourage us to put together a well-rounded committee. I think it was about 40 people then. That may not be feasible, and we had to have a facilitator come in and really make this happen to make it, develop it so that it would be a good package. And it was part of it was funded by some of our local businesses as well. So I just want to make sure we are cognizant of making sure we have some public members and community members as a part of that, parents and, students and that kind of thing.
Thank you. Anybody else? I would just like to let people know as an update that we are hoping to do interviews for the vacant board seat starting next week so that we can have someone seated by our August 11th meeting. So we are proceeding with that, and we'll let the public know once we've made that decision. If there's nothing else, are there any reports from board committees? Okay. And I know I need to appoint board committees for this year, but I think I would like to wait until after August 11th so we know who the new person is. And otherwise, could I have a motion to adjourn? Thank you very much. Thank you all for coming.